Osiris New Dawn, developed by Phoenix Fire Entertainment, is an open-world sci-fi survival game that experienced a rocky journey ever since its inception. Despite its ambitious premise and initial excitement, the game has become one of the lowest-rated survival games on Steam. The feedback after official release was so bad that it was delisted from Steam in 2023. It was the first time I ever officially reviewed a game on Steam. I felt compelled to warn players, and I laid it bare. I was honest. The delisting left me somewhat satisfied that no one else would waste their money. This video probably would never have been made if it weren't for one little thing. It's been relisted on Steam at a higher price. Today we will explore if anything's changed and whether this game is truly worth your time. I will discuss the reasons behind the vitriol that it earned from its community. I am Commander Tyrael, and this is my least favourite space survival game on Steam. Subscribe for more. Before I rant, we need some context. Space, the final frontier. It has always inspired curiosity and a desire to explore in humanity, and this urge to venture into the unknown is deeply embedded in our psyche. We constantly wonder, what lies over the next hill? And can life be better than it is right now? As we discovered more about the cosmos, we not only learned about the universe, but also gained insights into our own place within it. While the dream of exploring space is not yet attainable for the average person, it can be vividly experienced through literature and media, a genre known as science fiction. The sheer expanse of the universe provides authors and directors with nearly unlimited creative freedom. This genre has proven to be wildly successful in the modern age. Iconic examples include Star Wars, Star Trek, and Warhammer 40k. These universes have been captivating audiences for decades. This passion for sci-fi has successfully transitioned into the realm of video games. Our innate desire to build, explore, and discover has led to some of the most well-known and popular games such as Mass Effect, No Man's Sky, Kerbal Space Program, and Elite Dangerous. Many of these titles sought to immerse the player in the vastness of space, but they were only able to deliver a small slice, never the full experience. One ambitious title, Star Citizen, the so-called spiritual successor to the Freelancer series, was able to raise over $400 million in crowdfunding after it promised an unparalleled space experience. So the desire is really there. Ironically, just like real space exploration, we are yet to see it realized in our lifetime. Navigating through and thriving in hostile environments is at the core of exploration. Whether it's conquering unknown worlds or mastering alien conditions, this desire to survive is another part of what makes us human. As such, the survival genre of gaming was extremely successful.
Atmospheric conditions.
During the mid-2010s, this genre would be reaching its pinnacle with titles like Subnautica, DayZ, Ark Evolved, and Rust. They were all making waves. Enter Osiris New Dawn. Set in the year 2078, humans have started to venture into the cosmos. The player is sent to the Gliese 581 planetary system by the United Nations of Earth, the UNE, a member of the second colonization team with a task of studying planets for habitability. As the spacecraft arrives, it suffers a catastrophic event and is destroyed. A solitary life pod containing the player escapes the carnage and crashes onto a desert planet. In order to survive, the player must build a base while trying to overcome the harsh, somewhat unpredictable conditions. The game features both single-player and multiplayer gameplay in an open-world environment. Multiplayer originally had two factions. They seemed to be geared towards PvP, but this was later changed to a single faction, the UNE. Osiris was heavily inspired by The Martian, and benefited from the wave of success generated by the movie. The lead developer Brian, quoted as saying players would need to Matt Damon their way to survival. Examples of Matt Damoning included collecting human excrement to grow potatoes on a Mars-like planet.
Bruh.
Osiris New Dawn was first introduced at 2016 PAX West convention, where a single-player demo was showcased, but initial development actually started 5 years prior with a two-man team. Osiris New Dawn was released on Steam's Early Access program in September of 2016 and was immensely successful. The initial reception was positive, with players praising its immersive environment and survival mechanics.
I'm gonna dip this potato in some crushed Vicodin.
Osiris was so popular that ports for PS4 and Xbox were planned. Osiris New Dawn was released onto Steam's Early Access in the weeks following No Man's Sky, and like No Man's Sky, it emerged as a game that sought to offer an immersive space survival experience, but unlike No Man's Sky, it was isolated to one star, Gliese 581, and the moons that orbited a gas giant, Theseus Prime.
Are you there? Come in, Fox. Do you read me?
Dawkins, you're alive. How did you survive the...
A hostile lifeform reminiscent of June's sandworm featured prominently in videos and gaming news articles. Many gamers were eager to try and tame the worm, myself included. The game presented itself as a fight against the elements and hostile fauna, but with the added goal of trying to get home by building a spacecraft. You would need to visit a nearby moon and collect enough resources to build an interstellar starship. For 2016, the game, as presented, was both visually stunning and immersive. The day-night cycle in particular was beautiful, with nearby stellar bodies visible in different phases during the day. The world was alien, but so was the sky. What followed was a tumultuous journey marked by a long and drawn-out development process, technical challenges, and a lack of clear direction. Despite its ambitious premise, Osiris New Dawn's review scores plummeted. But what were the reasons behind its poor ratings? In my view, it was a classic example of scope creep that exceeded the abilities of a small team to manage, compounded by devs that were inexperienced or apathetic towards the community, themselves admitting that they weren't up to the task of managing a community and their expectations.
Planted that flag so we would never be stupid enough to accidentally go near it again.
No matter the reason, the development process soon hit several roadblocks. The small team of two faced numerous challenges, including major engine upgrades, data stability issues, bug fixes, optimization demands from players, and even a major hack that required a server wipe. These wipes were a common theme in the early days, and they are a death knell for a game that required so much time investment to reach endgame content. The dev team was expanded from 2 to 6 and then 12 if I read correctly. There was a transition from Unity 5 to Unity 2017, which required rewriting a substantial portion of the game. This drastically delayed progress, and many original ideas and systems were stripped back and replaced. Additionally, the team struggled with communication and marketing. There was an alleged disagreement with the publisher, and the devs ultimately reacquired their own publishing rights in 2020. No doubt this ate into the precious project funds.
He's a real dick punch.
The project lead Brian's vision for the game prioritized planetary immersion over traditional survival mechanics, and they had great initial framework to build on. Despite his apparent lack of enthusiasm for survival games, Osiris initially resonated quite well with survival enthusiasts, and this is the aspect the marketing really pushed. This seemed to create a disconnect between the game's development direction and the expectations of its player base, especially the explorers. To alleviate this, the devs focused on building new worlds, while the base planet still had many glaring issues and space travel barely worked. The game's development took another hit to its reputation when it moved from early access to a totally separate, closed experimental branch. This action effectively froze development on the main branch. It became clear that experimental was an entirely different set of systems, in essence, a totally different game. This decision was apparently made to address the numerous bugs and issues that plagued the original framework. The experimental branch allowed the developers to test new features and updates before releasing them on the main branch, but many of the dev blogs that were released seemed to list huge amounts of changes that were entirely inconsequential to the base playable experience on the main branch. To the devs' credit, they did have a few major updates, most of which happened around 2021. Mostly it seemed like the team were working on things that didn't really matter to the original dream. More planets when the original still didn't have their flora and fauna info entered, unusable sections of maps, and the creature AI and spawn rates were terrible. As of today, these other planets can't even be visited in story mode or the main survival mode, only in creative mode, which in my opinion is lame.
Vitals critical.
In January of 2023, almost out of the blue, Osiris New Dawn was officially released for Windows. It was updated to contain a finished story mode, which apparently is about looking for someone named Dawkins. But the reality was that a lot of the wildlife was gone, the story mode was laughably broken if not completed to the letter, and it hand-fed you tons of supplies that negated half of the tech tree and made survival a moot point. It didn't seem to let you do anything meaningful. The release was largely met with negative reviews, and many players criticised the game's lack of polish and believed that it was wholly unfinished, or even worse, a decent portion of the content had been cut or was not functioning at all. The developers' decision to release the game as is was marred by a "thanks for all the fish" attitude, and concluded with a "by the way, it's all your fault for not being more supportive, have a nice life" type of message. This set the community to boiling point. Their message was perceived as a clearly flashing neon sign that the developers were abandoning the game without addressing its numerous issues. The irony in their words were compounded by the fact that all of the prior updates were now labelled free expansions that were provided for our benefit. This post was removed and a replacement posted shortly after. It aimed to better explain their position, but it didn't seem to change the result. The game was done.
Dawkins, the dish is online. Do you see anything through the New Dawn computer?
I'm sorry. All system computers have been shut down.
Seek medical help immediately.
Players were left with a game that was vastly the same as the 2016 edition, but with a different engine that was slammed into the original box. There was weirdness in the new models and physics, and the slightest bumps with objects caused health damage or obnoxious collision sound effects. Amongst the furore, Osiris was quietly delisted from Steam. It still remained on Epic Store and Phoenix Fire's own web store. But that was it. Until the devs made a triumphant return. After some reflection, they decided there was more to do. The less skeptical side of me rejoiced. But then I realized that the devs had, by their own admission, spent $100,000 and 14 years of their life on this game. Why would they not want to keep the income trickling in? Now, I'm not saying that their motives are less than pure. I'm just expecting that the game be at least a respectable state where it can be enjoyed as originally intended. Several factors contributed to Osiris's poor ratings. The long and drawn-out development process left many players feeling disillusioned and frustrated. The inconsistent update schedule and seemingly poor communication regarding the actual vision or roadmap left more questions than answers. Additionally, the game's transition from early access back to a permanent experimental branch, then straight to full release, left many feeling baffled and enraged. The main reason for this video is, of course, because it is now relisted on Steam, and has moved from its long-term support to what seems like active development once more. The devs have stated that they wish to pick up the baton after their quiet sojourn. What concerns me is that this is just an attempt to prolong the life of a title and squeeze out just a little bit more blood from the stone. I spent a great deal of time replaying the game in its current state to really try and find some value as it stands. It is still a fantastic concept that can be visually stunning and aurally pleasing when the blatantly broken systems aren't conspiring to drive you insane. Watching a giant blue star rise over the horizon on a lava world is truly brilliant, but mostly there is no reason to want to survive on these planets. And like mentioned, once you get to space, the disappointment is immeasurable. The fact remains that they are selling a dream, and it fails to deliver any form of enjoyable reality. It may have been really fun to play multiplayer and build a colony with friends, minimizing the amount of man-hours needed to achieve anything. But during my time owning the game, 2016, multiplayer has never functioned. I couldn't in good conscience buy more copies just to play with my friends. The collisions, the random obnoxious sound effects, the shitty hitboxes, lack of real interesting features outside the original planet, difficult to control menus, tools that break when you swing them at open air, farms that can't grow anything, frustratingly obtuse descriptions of items that offer no real meaning, and the cherry on top is a completely meaningless space station that does nothing and cannot be pressurized. I could go on, and I will. The dev team may have spent 14 years of their life making this title, but humanity spent way more time on this title than they should have. I can tell that it's a labor of love, but somewhere, something went drastically wrong. It fell short of the dream, and there's nothing wrong with that. Learn from the failure, and try to do better. But don't beat a corpse that's cold. Just bury it, and move on. To further prove my claims, I will also upload a full playthrough of the story mode as it was at release. Make sure to check that out. And to the devs, no hard feelings. But please, just move on. Commander Tyrael, out.
Arrival to Earth in approximately 94 years.